Chapter 1. Eden's View, The Gathering, The Mission. The long marble hallway stretched up toward the large stone Colosseum looming off in the distance. The view from the open sides of the hallway gave way to the extraordinary sights of Eden, its wondrous land spanning the horizon. The small cityscape surroundings were sloped by lush green hills, stretching far beyond the realm of sight. Trees of numerous kinds, touched with bright-coloured foliage, dotted the hills toward the outlying area, before giving way to the beautiful sky above. Beyond the edge of visibility, the fading sapphire sky grew dimmer, its brilliance trimming with gold, pink, and red. It was evening as the eternal sun slowly began to set along the distant horizon. Twilight was drawing near as a lone figure stood in the hallway, watching the scene unfold. The woman was beautiful beyond imagination. Her long hair was weaved of golden curls touched with auburn, drifting gracefully along her neck. It flowed down her elegant white robe, which was cut to perfection, showing the natural shapely curves of a heavenly being. Her hazel eyes glistened with the colours of the distant fading light, leaving her mind to wander back into her memory. This was one of her favourite parts of the day. She loved to view a sunset. Her memories of mortality came back to her each time she gazed upon the magnificent array of colours and light. When she was a little girl, she would walk down to the shores of her village and watch the sun dive into the edge of the ocean. The birds would circle the skies one last time for the day, just before settling into their nests. The air would grow still, giving the lap of water over land a brighter, crisper sound. There were many fond memories of life before she became an angel, and there were those which she cherished more than any others. She pictured herself back in the days of being a little girl, walking the strips of sand along the shore. She began to hum a little tune that her mother had sung to her every so often, during those times in life that were hard. It made her feel just as good now as it did then, but it still left her with a longing to see her mother again. The yearning grew, pushing a rise to the melody, the humming sound of music drifting louder through the hallway. "Do you have to sing that song all the time?" muttered a voice from the side. Brianna drew in a small smile as she finished her song and closed her eyes. She was not startled by the voice, but accepted it, for she knew who it was. "Why, Uriah, what a pleasant surprise," replied Brianna. Her eyes turned to the one person in life she had always termed her best friend, regardless if she used to be a demon. Brianna never looked at Uriah as someone who was malicious or intentionally cruel to others. For as long as she had known her, Uriah's life was filled with many hardships, most of which she had overcome. Yet those who have lived lives of nothing but noble righteousness saw her as someone who was only here by chance, and not worth the time to develop into the potential she could be. Yet every time Brianna looked at her, she could see something more. She saw that potential. However, Uriah's appearance just did not show it at the moment. The sullied angel sat along the ledge of the walkway, her hands tucked under her knees, her face pointing down, ignoring the sights that surrounded her. The robe she wore was anything but exquisite. It was tattered and torn in places. The garment lay flat on her body, with little waft and furl. Once it may have been the essence of pearl, like Brianna's, but now it was greyed and worn out, giving the look of what may have been handed down from a long line of uncared siblings. Her hair was of tarnished bronze, as if a long-lost heirloom had been reclaimed from the earth after many years of neglect. Its matted stringiness fell over her eyes, leaving them to pierce through the shroud, as if she were peering through a veil. Dark bluish greys swirled along her corneas. A multitude of colours would fill her eyes, showing her present mood, for now she was sombre, almost sad. It had been her predominant mood for most of her existence in heaven. For how can anyone who dwelled in the depths of shadow truly be accepted for who they are? Brianna watched as Uriah lifted her head. The blonde angel gave her a warm smile that would have brightened anyone's day. Yet she could tell Uriah was not going to be receptive to her kind gesture. She usually wasn't. As sincere as Brianna felt, she knew the limits of Uriah's acceptance of gratitude, and she was no exception. Yet for some reason, Uriah tolerated it. As with all things, Brianna's ever-expanding patience would just have to wait until her moody friend was ready to accept such kindness. "So I take it you're here for the meeting?" asked Brianna. Uriah gave a sigh, turning her head toward the view outside. "I guess," she huffed. "It's not like my opinion on anything really matters." "What is this meeting all about, anyway?" Brianna tried to keep from smiling even more, as she knew, but could not tell her. Not yet. "We'll find out soon enough, I suppose," she replied. Uriah glared at her counterpart. She knew. Even worse, she knew and wasn't going to tell her. That aggravated Uriah to no end. She always contemplated even attending such meaningless gatherings of congregative nonsense. Every so often, there would be a gathering of great importance, or so they would say. Even fewer of those was Uriah actually invited to. She had little cares for the politics of heaven, for she did not carry the burden of servitude, or so she thought. Nevertheless, for some reason or another, they would call her forth to attend, and therefore she would show, appearing to be bored out of her mind. It was pointless to her, just another way to make her struggle through her ever-challenged existence. A few patrons began to pass them by. Brianna glanced about, noticing more coming toward them. One by one they greeted her. Few even acknowledged Uriah. "What am I doing here?" Uriah grumbled under her breath. Hopping off her perch, she prepared to leave. A hand caught her by the arm. Uriah froze. She turned to look at Brianna, who was desperately pleading to her. "Please," she begged. "It would mean a lot to me if you stayed this time. Please, for me, Uriah." Uriah's heart softened, her eyes turning teal in colour. She was surprised, more from Brianna's desperation rather than her action. For a moment, Uriah looked at her friend with pity. Of all the beings she had to beg to be there, why she wanted her, Uriah would never understand. Ever since that day, just a few years ago, when they were enemies, Uriah would never have imagined that they would be here together. How cruel of a hand fate had dealt her. Trapped in a place where no one, besides Brianna, appeared to accept her, and never to return to the pit of despair where her former masters dwelled. In that alone was there something to be grateful for. "All right," she huffed in defeat. Uriah found herself giving in to more of Brianna's requests as of late, but she also noticed something else. Her mood would change. It was not the spiteful hate she had felt before, but more of a nervous excitement that would emanate from her now and again. She could not tell what it was, and she was not about to go asking around about it either. Uriah decided to maintain her silence and deal with it herself, which was something she was very much accustomed to. The two of them turned to look at the large double doors at the end of the hall. They remained closed as more of their colleagues started to gather and wait, the gallery of beings steadily growing before them. "Ah, ladies," called a person from behind. Brianna smiled, turning to the familiar voice. "Good evening, Sienna," she replied. The dark-haired woman bowed to the two of them and then waved them over to a corner away from the crowd. Uriah groaned. She knew what was coming as her eyes changed to a deep purple of loathing. Sienna was the motherly type, always feeling she was the one to solve someone else's problem and teach them a lesson about it in the end. She took great joy giving out advice and talking down to those whom she felt were in the wrong, which was frequently the case when she talked to Uriah. "How are the two of you doing?" asked Sienna, her voice elegant, yet slightly condescending. Her short hair danced around with each turn of her head, Streaks of silver ran through her darkened curls, as if lightning was striking with each sway. She watched the two, her oaken eyes twinkling in anticipation. "Fine, thank you," replied Brianna. "How are you?" Sienna put the back of her hand to her head and sighed. "Oh, I feel as if I'm still learning so much about existence all the time. It's such tiring work being an angel," she moaned. "But I don't need to remind the two of you that now, do I?" Brianna and Uriah glanced at each other, not quite knowing how to respond. Sienna was such a difficult person to figure out. One moment she would be playfully carefree to anyone, and then turn deadly serious the next. To some, it was often difficult to tell the difference. She took great pride in the work that she did, and did her best to let you know about it as well. Her confidence would breathe into your skin when you stood next to her, leaving you to admire her strong, beautiful presence. Her aura was bright, shining like a sun on a midsummer's day. Even though it had only been a handful of years since Sienna had become an angel, her demeanour alone would make one think as if she had been there since the inception of the universe. However, Sienna was not the perfect angel that she may have wanted others to believe. Although hardly admitting to it, she did have her share of problems as well. "So tough luck on that supernova the other day," Uriah muttered, noticing Sienna's eyes narrow. "Only took out half of the Phantas galaxy, right?" Sienna glared at the unkempt angel. "Your acceptance into our grace is still somewhat challenging to me, young one," snapped Sienna. "Nevertheless, it has been a most difficult time as of late." She bowed her head, trying not to show her distress to the others. She had trouble keeping focus on her tasks as of late, but Sienna made no excuses for her inner struggles. To her, showing weakness meant losing control, and that was something that she could never let anyone see. Brianna stepped forward, trying to change the subject. "It is so admirable that you have achieved so much in so little time," she praised her. Sienna's eyes brightened at the compliment. "Oh, child, you are so kind in your words, and might I say that I think you are destined for greater things to come, I can tell," replied Sienna, unaware of Uriah, who was making a face behind her back. "And sooner than you may expect." The low, dull sound of the bell tone echoed throughout the hall. All looked up to see the large doors slowly begin to swing open. The gathering of patrons shifted about, preparing to make their way into the great hall. Uriah followed behind Brianna as the blonde angel led the way. Their slow pace forced them to merge in with the mass of beings ahead. Soon they were in the crowd, making their way toward the large chamber. Brianna could not remember the last time so many were called to the great hall. Nervous tension ran over her skin, erupting from her inner core as the moment was starting to catch up to her. The former demon was watching her friend, noticing that something wasn't quite right. She appeared to be anxious, even burdened by the idea that so many were here to attend. What is so important about this meeting? They finally reached the stadium threshold, being among the last to enter. The Great Hall was a large circular arena which formed around a circular stepped dais in the centre. There was a small open space around the dais before the start of the arena seating, a myriad of circles leading up to the brim at the top of the hall. Many other angels had already taken seat and awaited the meeting to commence. The two made their way up past many of the aisles, finding a place at the top, next to two large male angels. Uriah leaned over slightly, listening in on the conversation between the two, interested in the possible gossip. It was not hard for her to hear, as most were talking overtly, trying to hear themselves above the rest. "I understand something big is going to happen," said the larger angel next to Uriah. She glanced at him, noticing his armoured chest and shoulder plates. Must be a guardian, she thought. Guardians were the ones who kept watch over all, maintaining a peaceful balance through all of existence. But there were those who wore the crimson robes like this particular angel, signifying him as one of the few who heeded the battle cry for heaven. There were many angels that stood among the elite of the Creator's right hand, all strong enough to keep those who would defy the light at bay. Seldom were the times they would be called upon, for war was not a resort of any kind in heaven. But they were there as a reminder, for what could happen when angels lost their grace? Things are not looking good on Earth Prime. If you ask me, I think it is time for another cleansing, answered the angel next to him. He looked more like a scholar, his robes reflecting the blue and grey colours of the artisans, record-keepers of heaven's accounts. Uriah frowned. She did not care one way or another about what happened on Earth. She turned, wanting to ask Brianna a question, but then hesitated. Brianna was looking away, watching the stage below in unusual anticipation. The look on her face was one of eagerness, too eager not to know what was going to happen. It ate at Uriah, wondering exactly what she knew. Down at the centre of the arena, a large, bearded figure walked toward the dais. He stopped in front of it, his left hand lifting high into the air, motioning for the audience to quiet down. His ebony skin glowed with a radiance that circled his grey hair and beard. The white robes he wore had large blue embroidered stripes running down the sides, deeming him among the elite. The large golden staff he carried in hand glistened in the light. He tapped it on the ground as bolts of electricity shot out from the bottom, spreading across the floor. Each tap rang aloud, beckoning the crowd to surrender their attention. The meeting was coming to order. Uriah had seen this elder a few times before. His presence brought a small lump to her throat. The situation was indeed serious. He was Cale, keeper of time and space, and speaker for the Creator. Cale glanced about the hall, waiting until he knew for certain their attention was focused on him. Silence fell over the crowd before he spoke. It has come to pass once again that existence as we know it has reached its extent and must be minimized for the continued stability of the Creator's children. There shall be a merging of such proportions that has not been seen in 100 millennia. The Creator has chosen one of you to carry out the quest of which I speak. Now, I call forth from this gathering Brianna of Solstice. Uriah's wide teal eyes blinked in shock. Brianna stood up and made her way down to the lower stage. There were many murmurs rolling through the crowd. Everyone sat in anxious anticipation for what was about to unfold. Uriah shot a glance down to the front row. She noticed Sienna nodding in approval and conversing with the seraph next to her. What is going on? Brianna approached Cale. He nodded to her, acknowledging her presence among those in attendance. She turned to look at the audience. Everyone's attention was solely fixated upon her. This was the moment she was waiting for. Cale had contacted her earlier in the day about what was going to happen. Still, her excitement was getting the best of her. She turned once again to face Cale, who was looking at her with admiration. Brianna bowed her head in respect, her humbleness confirming her selection in return. Brianna, your faithful honour has been noticed by the Assembly, and by the Creator himself, Cale spoke for all to hear. I hereby charge you with the task of forging the layers of existence together. Not an uncommon task, but a special one, for the Earth has been selected to be the merging point, an achievement of which has not been accomplished since the inception of creation itself. Another wave of murmurs swept through the crowd, their concern being expressed with audible unease. The Earth, the template for all of creation, was going to be the focal point of this merger. Cale followed the crowd. He waited until silence befell them once again before continuing, his eyes lowering to the angel before him once more. Are you ready to accept the task set out before you, young one? Brianna swallowed hard, her mind set on what he was asking of her. Yes, Your Grace, she replied, trying to convey as much confidence as she could. Cale nodded to her in acceptance. His gaze lifted to the crowd, addressing all once again. Are there any here who would form an objection to the notion at hand? Silence covered the arena. Even though some questioned the request of one so young, no one dared to speak out in protest. All eyes were now set on the small angel before them. Brianna turned her gaze to Sienna as her friend returned to her a look of pure admiration. Since Sienna's inception into heaven years ago, Brianna had taken her under her care, showing her a world that mortals have only dreamed of before. She had gone to great lengths to make sure Sienna did not stray from the path of light, for there were plenty of times when she might have turned away from her guidance. Sienna learned quickly and rose through the ranks, earning much responsibility and personal honor with her deeds. Brianna respected her, more for her courageous strength rather than the arrogant self-loathing she showed to those that caught her ill-tempered side. In turn, Sienna gave her nurturing, the caring that reminded Brianna so much of her own mother from a time near forgotten. There were many times that Brianna would look to Sienna as if she were the senior angel, forgetting that she herself had been in heaven over 100 years before. Brianna turned her gaze up farther, toward the higher aisles where Uriah was sitting. She could tell Uriah was in shock from what was going on. Uriah's eyes were probably grey, which meant she was not feeling any emotions whatsoever. She just could not believe what she was seeing. Brianna wanted Uriah to be appreciative of her selection for such a grand assignment. Nothing meant more than the approval of those closest to her, and even that was a trying concept from someone like Uriah. Brianna tried not to convey too much pity for her, for she knew that the former demon would have none of it. Uriah was a proud being. Although her former self made her brash and foolhardy, she still relied on her for friendship and guidance. It was the least she could do after all that they had been through together. Cale acknowledged the crowd's favourable silence. He struck his large staff on the ground. It crackled once more as a thunderous noise sounded with each solid strike. "So it has come to pass," he announced. "For the merger to be successful, you have 3 tasks to accomplish. First, you must choose a hero, someone to carry out that which you set forth. Great consideration is needed to find someone of stout honour and noble blood, for he or she is to gather forces strong enough to complete your second task. You will undoubtedly face great adversity during your trials. There will most certainly be many evil ones that will challenge you along the way, possibly even the Lord of Doom herself. They will not hesitate at the chance to corrupt and destroy all that we work for, especially when the earth is at stake. Take heed in what is about to be put before you. There will be extreme risk when facing such a cunning enemy. Earth has maintained its sovereignty throughout the realms of existence by the grace of the Creator. But now, with the threat of evil looming over his children, the Lord of Doom will stop at nothing to take away what we hold so dear." Brianna nodded, understanding the severity of such a task. It belittled her to think about how she would attempt to carry out such an assignment. Her bravery would be put to the test, as once again she would face her darkest fears. "Last, but certainly most important," added Cale, "in order for the merger to succeed, a bond of love is needed to fortify the modified pool of existence. Only then will your mission be complete. The bond of love between 2 individuals has held existence together since its creation eons ago. With each new universe, with each merging of the old, the bond of love has sealed them together with its power. Now, Brianna, the time has come for you to carry out that which you were destined to do. Remember the laws, for they will guide you in your greatest time of need. And may the blessings of all fall upon you and your mission. Go forth now, and prepare for what is to come. This meeting is adjourned." The final staff strikes signalled the end of the meeting. The gathering of angels rose from their seats and began to file out of the great hall. There were many congratulatory praise given to Brianna as they passed her by. Most were forth giving of their support, yet some appeared hesitant and unsure. "My child, I knew you were destined for greatness," praised Sienna, taking to the side of her comrade. Brianna's smile was thankful but small, growing dimmer with each passing patron. Her mind was racing with thoughts of what she needed to do. Her heart thumped like a timpani drum as the eyes of all peered upon her. She had to focus. She had to be strong in the face of the coming adversity, and she needed the support of those around her to be successful. "So is this why you wanted me to attend?" cried a voice from the side. Brianna looked up to see Uriah. Her eyes were glowing with an intense red glare. She was angry. "Do you think by showing off how good you are to everyone is supposed to make me feel better? Well, in case you were wondering, it isn't. Congratulations. I hope you're happy." Uriah turned and followed the remaining crowd out of the great hall. Brianna's lips quivered as she tried to reach out to her friend. "Uriah, please," she cried. "That's not the reason." But she was gone. Brianna stood, watching Uriah disappear among the sea of others. A hand touched her shoulder as Sienna was watching as well. "If she is as good of a friend as you are to her, then she'll see," she told her. Brianna turned to Sienna, agreeing with the sentiment. "I know she is a good person, but—" She looked back at the doors as the last of the angels exited. "Come, my dear, you have much to prepare for," reminded Sienna. "There is much you need to know before you begin." The two finally headed for the large double doors. Brianna withdrew into herself for a moment, wishing that things had gone a little better. Uriah was the only one she could truly turn to in times when no one else appeared to understand her. Given the nature of the friendship they shared, Brianna seldom found comfort with those around her. For some reason, Uriah gave her reassurance, but not in the way it was intended. No other could know or truly understand the past that they shared. The one thing that bonded their friendship more than anything else was what drew them together in a world that appeared to live without it. Pain. A life that included things that no one dared talk about in the realm of goodness. And right now, it was the only thing they shared.